Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am showing you guys how I make one of my sipper mugs. A lot of you guys have requested this, so here we go. This I'm throwing with B-mix clay here, about 1¼ pounds. I'm just going for a tall cylinder shape, about, I don't know, 5 to 6 inches tall. I want my mug to be about 12 ounces. You can make them really any shape here. I've done bubble shapes. Yeah, you can kind of be really creative in the size that you would want. Once my mug has dried for a little while, I come back later that night and I roll out a slab. I go for about 3/8 inch thickness, and I didn't make very many, so I only needed a little bit. I'm going to compress both sides of the clay really well. Again, I only made 4 tonight, so I only have to cut out 2 circles because you're going to half each circle here. So I'm just going to quickly finish compressing this clay. And then I'm going to grab my mug and I'm just going to, a lot of people use cookie cutters and stuff, but I usually just grab my needle tool and I just trace around the rim of the mug. And a lot of my mugs I throw about the same size, so I don't worry too much about them being the wrong size. So I'm just going to trace it out. It doesn't have to be exact because you're going to mess around with it. And then I'm just going to let that harden up and I'm going to trim my mug. And I'm just going for a nice clean looking foot here. I'm not going anything too crazy, just cleaning up the sides and giving it a little foot. I love to do these because I just feel like it makes it look a little bit more professional and just cleans it up really nice. Once it's all trimmed and ready to go, I get my post and I stamp my maker's mark. If you have a maker's mark, this is the time that you're going to want to do it, because once you put the lid on the sipper, you won't be able to go back in and do that. Sometimes my post will make some marks on inside, so I just clean those up real quick. And some other tools you're going to want for this is you're going to want a needle tool to cut right here where I'm going to cut this in half, that circle that I made earlier. You're going to want some smoothing tools, a serrated rib, and kind of it's very similar to adding a handle. Right here I'm just opening up my mini cutters. I got these on Temu. I don't know if I have a link for them, but I love this little oval rectangle shape. However, you could use a little circle shape and do a half moon shape cut out here. Either one will work just fine. After I cut that out, I typically will measure my lid on the rim of my cup before I score it, but I forgot that step, so I'm just scoring it now, and then I will have to backtrack a little bit, but it's all fine. Sometimes it's a learning curve. So I'm measuring it here, realizing, oh, it's too big. So I'm going to trim it down. You're going to want this to fit just right inside of that rim, right inside of your cup. So you're going to want it to be a little bit smaller than your cup is. And then I'm going to score it again, measure it again, score and measure, back and forth. I'm going to realize it's actually too wide. It's too wide for what I want it for. I want to make sure that you can pour liquid and ice and things on the other side of that rim, or the other side of that lid. And like if people use frothers or whatever they're going to use it for, I want to make sure there's enough space. So I'm going to cut it just less than half. And I'm just taking my serrated rib here and I am just scoring on that inside, just inside of that rim. Really good. You can use whatever scoring tool that you like to use. I just really like the serrated rib. I also don't use a slip. I usually just use water. So I'm just getting my paintbrush wet here and just dabbing some water on it to create that slip for me. And then I'm just going to press this up, get firmly up against that rim, trying to keep it as flat as I can. And my piece here is pretty leather hard, so I'm able to be pretty aggressive with it. But if your piece is not quite leather hard, I would just be a little bit more gentle in this stage. And I we'll end up using those pieces that I actually ended up cutting off, that extra clay. I'll end up using those in just a minute. But just get ready for a lot of smoothing and a lot of cleaning up. Right here, I'm just getting it wet, and I'm actually just going to slap it right on top of that seam. This is where I can see a lot of cracking happening for me. I have had cracking here in the past, and so I like to just make sure that that seam is really filled in and secure. I typically will put a coil in underneath before I do any top work, because the coil, when you put it underneath the lid, it really makes a nice secure shelf, and it allows you to be a little bit more firm on the top. So I would recommend putting this coil that I'm making right now on first before you do any cleanup work on the top. And I am just rolling out a little coil. I'm going to get it wet, and then I'm just going to drop it in at about a 90 or 45 degree angle. And man, your fingers are your best tools. So I'm just running blind here. So this is just based on feel. You won't be able to see on the inside, which is kind of hard for me. But I just make sure my fingernails are really short so that I can really use the tip of my finger as a really good tool to smooth out that coil and make sure there's no sharp edges, and make sure that it just fully fills in all those cracks on the bottom. And that nice gives you that nice shelf that lid can sit on. And then I also like to put another one and wrap it around those corner joints, because I typically will see a lot of cracking here as well. So I like to just make a little bit more of a joint there. Those are probably your most important ones. And then you just use your finger and just smooth it out. You could also use like an end of a paintbrush here, or a wooden tool. And then I'm just going to add some more clay here. This one I didn't even get wet. I just started I think it was just still wet enough that I could just slap it on there, which is nice. And again, I'm just using my finger to smooth it all out. I'm going to get a soft rib. This is one of my favorites, soft rib, and I'm just going to keep smoothing that clay into those creases and making sure that it just stays as flat as it can be on the top, and just moving that extra clay around to make sure it blends really nice. A few other things you could do here. I'm kind of just making mine a very basic shape. I'm speeding it up so that you guys don't have to see it all. But you could easily make the edge of the lid scalloped, or you could roll in a really nice design here. There's some really fun design aspects that you could make here. I had my coil going all the way underneath where the liquid will come out, and so I'm just taking my needle tool and I'm cutting that in half, and I'm going to push it up around that joint right there, just to make sure that there's no cracking that happens there. And then I just get an end of a paintbrush. This is one of my favorite tools. You just get it wet, and it works really well to just smooth out little spaces, and it kind of just helps me reshape that hole, because I kind of, since adding more clay into it, but just really making sure that those joints are smooth. And then I'm just going to run my finger back through and just double check that there's not going to be any sharp edges or anything. And I recommend before you put it into your bisque fire to just run your finger back through and just make sure that there's no sharp edges there, because you're kind of running blind. So you kind of have to just double check many times that everything is good down there. And yeah, you can do a lot of fun things with these mugs and really make them so unique and fun. But I have made many of these. I used to make them just putting the clay just right on the rim, and that didn't work for very long for me. I just didn't like the look of it. I feel like these ones just look more professional. Again, they're a little bit harder to do, but they just really give it a better look. And I like that you can store them upside down. I'm actually going to flip it upside down and just make sure that I'm just going to push it onto the table and just make sure that it isn't wobbly. And then just clean up any marks you may have made. And honestly, drying them upside down can really help. If you notice you're having issues with cracking or warping or anything, you can dry them upside down, and it can help keep that lid flat. So I'm just going to finish cleaning this up. It's amazing what you will find when you move it to a different angle and see all the things that need to be cleaned up on it still. And it's just funny to me watching me make this, how many times I do the same thing over and over again. But yeah, this is such a fun way to just elevate your travel mug. And if you guys haven't already, please like and subscribe. And please tag me in any videos you make making these, or any products that you guys make from this video. And I would love to see what you guys come up with. Thanks. Catch you later.